Start recording.
Our world is changing rapidly. Urbanization is a megatrend. By 2030, 6 out of 10 people in the world are expected to live in urban areas. Cities take up 2% of the land, yet consume 60% of energy. They release 70% of greenhouse gas emissions and produce 70% of global waste. Cities face many challenges, from extreme poverty and unemployment to climate change. If cities are unplanned and poorly managed, the problems only multiply. Homelessness, slums, growing inequality, climate crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic has created more vulnerabilities and deepened inequalities. Conflicts and natural disasters displace people and destroy cities and towns. The new urban agenda is a toolkit that helps governments, cities, and communities to meet urban challenges. The new urban agenda is universally applicable. It offers the how of sustainable urbanization through data analytics, policy advice, and practical examples. So far, 28 countries have reported on the new urban agenda. We need more actions to implement the new urban agenda. UN Habitat advances local actions and sustainable urbanization now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can see me. Yes, now. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session, one more session on our NUA learning series. And today we're going to talk about tracking progress with purpose, our new urban agenda indicators in practice. And just to remind you that this is our last regional session of with the African region, but not the last one of our NUA learning series. We continue with our global webinar, so stay connected. As mentioned. Yeah, now. Can you hear me well, right? Or do I have echo? Okay. Let me stop sharing. Yes. Now you can hear me better. Okay, so for the ones that has been already participating in our regional webinars and global webinars, you might know that this is the 4th regional webinar, but we had 2 global ones at the beginning of our NUA learning series. We have been talking about how to implement the NUA in national and local urban plans. We talk also about mobilizing resources for transformative action. We talk also about designing inclusive and resilient cities. And the last session was about powering local action and participatory processes. Today, we are going to focus on tracking progress with purpose. That means we are talking about indicators and the monitoring process on the new urban agenda. So this is quite an important session for many of us who are involved in the use of indicators and about analyzing data and data sets. So and the next 2 sessions, as I mentioned, this is the last regional webinar, but in 2 weeks, we're going to have our NUA global webinar, the wrap-up webinar, where we are going to see how to transport or how to translate all this information that we got in the last series into our reporting national reports, right? So I will invite you to scan this QR code, so then you can register already for our next session and stay tuned for also more news about the new urban agenda. I'm gonna go with a couple of housekeeping rules. As you might know, most of you, please mute your microphone if you don't want to talk, but please unmute your microphone at any time if you want to make questions or insights or thoughts about what we are talking. Also, you can also raise your hand to ask questions or use the Q&A box or the chat to give us any inputs, insights, thoughts, or questions as well. Remember that this webinar is recorded, so it means that all this material will be available in our NUA platform. And also keep your cell phone close by, because we have a couple of activities today that we want to engage with you. We want to know about you and how is your involvement in the monitoring process of the New Urban Agenda. Also, please don't forget to enjoy, participate, and stay with us. We have 1 hour and a half session today that we hope that is going to be engaging and quite interesting for you. And now I will kindly ask you to switch on your camera because I know that I can see many familiar names. So I would like to see your faces, and maybe we can take a picture of the group before we start our session of the day. Yes, that's exactly. Now I can see people that I know that has been connected and joining us in all the sessions. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's been already a long journey since September last year that we started our NUA webinars. So we are already 6 months approximately breaking down and transmitting and translating the New Urban Agenda to basic concepts for you to understand the implementation, monitoring, and reporting of it. We are done. Just let me know, my colleagues. Yaye, give me a thumbs up if we are ready with our picture. Perfect. Thank you, Yaye. So now I would like to invite you now to scan this QR code, because as I mentioned, we like to know about who is the people that is there behind the cameras. So I will give you some time to scan the QR code and introduce yourself. Tell us where are you connecting from, what is your background, how much is the knowledge that you have about the indicators or the topic that we are going to touch base today. And I'm going to go back to the answers in a few minutes. But while you fill the form, then I would like to remind you as well about our NUA Champions campaign. I know many of you have heard about this, but if you don't, then I will tell you that the people who has been participating in the learning series, you can be a NUA champion, and how and why you should join these sessions, because you can be awarded. And this will be a certification for people who is active in our sessions and who complete the learning series. So then you need to attend 6 out of 8 sessions or engage in 4 out of 5 sessions to be awarded with this certificate. Also, if you are joining from on behalf of your institution or your organization, you can also be awarded as a NUA country champions. That means that if you join with your regional office, country office, a minister, a local, national, or national government, then you can also be awarded with a certificate. How? You can do it either having coordinated participation across the sessions. That means that you have 3 representatives either per country, per session, in 8 sessions in total. Also, you can demonstrate cross-level engagement. That means having national and local representatives in our session. Or you can also reach out to us and share with us one case of a study or concrete NUA practice that you think that should be showcased in this learning series. How is going to be the certification? So please, these certificates are delivered upon request. This means that we are going to promote these achievements on our NUA platform and also in Habitat social media. So I will kindly ask you to register to all sessions with the same email, so then we can track your participation along the series. If that's clear, if there are no questions about that, then I can move. Another point that I would like to clarify here also, the certificates will be delivered once we finish the learning series. So that means around March of April, we will be delivering the certificates. Okay, if there are no questions about this, then I will move to the session of today, and just to remind what is the new urban agenda. Many of us may be new on this topic, so remember that the NUA is an action-oriented implementation framework for the urban component of all SDGs, not only the 11, which is the one related to cities. And also, the new urban agenda provides principles and policies for planning, managing, and developing cities. That means that what is the goal of the new urban agenda? What we want to achieve, of course, is social sustainability, economic, environmental, and spatial sustainability. And then, if we talk about the how, is when we refer to that in the new urban agenda as the means of implementation, and that is what has been our focus of the learning series, where we talk about the intervention mechanisms as national or local urban policies. We talk also about urban design as well, or municipal finance, and also about other topics related with the means of implementation. That is, how do we implement the new urban agenda? And today, after we went through all these concepts along the series, we are going to focus in another component of the new urban agenda, which is the monitoring. And basically, is the reason why. Why are we doing that? Why are we implementing municipal finance or national urban plans based on the new urban agenda? And basically, this is to understand, to analyze, and to evaluate the progress and the challenges that we have in our implementation projects, right? So if we have many projects, many good actions implemented on the ground, but if we don't monitor on how is the progress of this implementation, then we cannot track and we cannot improve as well based on that data. So for that, how are we going to go through that topic is about, we're going to explain how to use the NUA indicators to assess progress and inform better policies. Also, we are going to describe some strategies and tools to select, to adapt, and to apply these indicators in different contexts, because we know that is not a standalone alone rule for every country. And then we are going to formulate all together a commitment that we can conduct, we can apply to contribute to the new urban agenda monitoring process. So the agenda of today, we are going to go through first a presentation from an expert of UN Habitat, where we are going to see how to harness data for urban insights. We are going to talk about urban observatories and the urban monitoring framework. Then we are going to do a short exercise about how can we identify a starting point as us, as individuals here connected? How can we start using the indicators and implementing the urban indicators? And then we are going to go through our second presentation, where we talk about the global urban indicators database, analyzing and processing data. And lastly, we're going to go to another reflection exercise where we identify together challenges in the implementation of these indicators. So please stay with us. I hope that you are going to enjoy this session. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to write them on the chat or to raise your hand. Now, I hope that you had enough time to introduce yourself in our activity, and I'm gonna give the floor to my colleague Agnese, who is gonna help us with the results of the survey. Agnese.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose. I'm gonna share my screen to see a little bit of to give you a little bit of an overview of what we have in the room today, who we have in the room today. I see we have only 14 responses so far. The QR code is still on screen, so you can still join the link, and you can still join the survey, and the link is also in the chat. So please access it and let us know a little bit about yourself, where you're connecting from, and how familiar you are with the topic that we will address today. So just to see a little bit who is in the room today, we have participants connecting from many different countries, and this is really, really interesting because gathering your perspective from different contexts will really enrich our discussion, because we will be able to compare challenges and opportunities that you face in your daily work and in the different contexts where you work. In terms of representation, we have a vast majority of participants that come from the stakeholder groups, so either academia, private sector, NGOs. And I saw that we have also some participants that come from Urban Observatory, and this is something that we will touch upon during this session today. But in general, we are very happy to see this distribution of different entities that are represented here, because as you know, effective monitoring really relies on contributions from many different actors. Moving on to the level of confidence that we have in the room today, I am pleased to see that the vast majority is somewhat confident, but today's session is designed for every type of confidence, every level of confidence. So we will first provide an overview, and then we will dig deeper into technicalities and address some of the most common challenges. So there is a little bit of everything and food for thoughts for every type of confidence level. In terms of the area where you think you need more support to strengthen the use of indicators to inform policy decisions, these are all very critical areas where support is needed to move from data collection to really inform policy and planning. And today's presentation will touch upon these different points. So we encourage you to really raise your hands and open your mic to ask questions or to share your challenges and or approaches that you use in the different steps of the process. In terms of the biggest barriers that we see here represented, the majority is related to limited or poor quality data and the weak link between data and decision making. These are two very critical barriers. And what we want to do with this session, but in general with the learning series, is not only to identify barriers, but to try to identify some entry points to encourage change and to implement changes. And this will be the final point of today's session. In terms of the capacity building support that will be more useful to strengthen urban monitoring in your context, we see a strong prevalence of data collection, and then we have data availability, indicator tracking. These are all topics that we will touch upon today, but also this type of answer is really important for us so that we can inform the design of capacity building supports in the future. Thank you for those of you who are continuing to answer the survey. As I mentioned, the link is in the chat, so you can continue answering it even after this, after I close my presentation and I give the floor to Daniel. And now it's time for me to introduce our speaker for today. Let me just introduce him. He is Daniel Gitira. He's data analyst from the Data and Statistics Unit here at Unit Habitat. Thank you for being with us today, Daniel, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Agnes and Maria. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Daniel Gitira. Thank you. From the Data and Analytics team of UN Habitat. So I also welcome my colleagues I join my colleagues in welcoming you to this webinar where we are going to discuss several components on a new urban agenda. So this ranges from data components on monitoring, so particularly focusing on tracking progress. So when we discuss progress, this has to do with understanding where we are, the progress we are making, and where we want to be. Yeah, so mapping this gap requires data, and this is why data comes very central in terms of understanding and the implementation of the new urban agenda. Yeah, so just to start with some context here, I'm within the Data and Statistics Unit, where we work with data a lot and cities and national statistical offices, checking their capacity on statistics, urban indicators, the tools they require to generate data and monitor, looking at the Urban Observatory, which I'm going to discuss also later in my presentation. Also building capacity, like the ones we are having here, making sure that we can share the best practices, but also harnessing emerging technologies. Like now we know we have a lot of data opportunities coming from the big data, from the Earth observation, how can we integrate all this into understanding urban areas and also monitoring and reporting their performances. Yeah, so in terms of, if you focus on the indicator, sorry. Yeah, so in terms of the indicators, we do know that the urban indicators within the SDG framework are very much within the goal 11, but you know there's so many other components in other goals which are connecting to goal 11. So you cannot think about urban without thinking about goal 11, but also all the other goals within the SDG framework. And then we have the new urban agenda indicator framework, which now looks at the urban component. It has been mentioned by my colleague. So the urban component is now within the new urban agenda, from monitoring, looking at how we can use data to inform action and how we can realize progress using, within the urban areas. So we do have a framework that captures the indicator frameworks for urban monitoring, which also extract all the urban components of urban monitoring. So all the indicator framework within the new urban agenda, the indicator frameworks within the SDG, it harmonizes all the indicators. So once you implement it, then you're already capturing all the indicators that you need to focus on under the new urban agenda. And this is called the Global Urban Monitoring Framework. So this is a framework that has been endorsed by for implementation by United Nations Statistics Commission, and it came as a request from United Nations Statistics Commission to harmonize all the efforts which have been applied in monitoring urban areas, and it brought together all the indicator framework, and it is placed essentially at the center of SDG localization, where we have these other components of SDG stated initiatives within UN Habitat. So we have this program supporting SDG localization, realizing action at the local level, monitoring at the local level, and also reporting action at the local level. And this is all within the framework of leaving no one behind, multi-stakeholder partnership. So it's nice to see we have all these stakeholders from the national level, from the local governments, from the academia, and also from the civil society. So this is the structure of the monitoring framework. The framework looks at different indicators that you require to monitor the new urban agenda. So here we have the indicator structured in domains, just the way like you have the indicators within the SDGs are structured by goals. So we have the indicators here structured by domains, and under each of the domain, we have clusters of indicators. And each of the cluster will inform you how your urban area or how your country, how your region is performing in terms of the specific components at the indicator level, at the domain level, but also at the city objective level. The city objective here focuses on the different components of SDG 11, which looks at how our cities are safe, peaceful, inclusive, resilient, but also sustainable. And this is the essence of urban monitoring, and the UMF and also the new urban agenda is to identify where we are by capturing the baselines and also knowing where we want to be. So ideally, if you want to monitor performance for your urban area, what you need to do is to know where you are in terms of performance of individual indicators, performance of clusters of indicators, in terms of metrics here. Now this has to be very practical in terms of having metrics which are measurable, having all the smart indicators, specific, measurable, action, time bound, and then you also have your target. And then after looking at the target, then you're able to see the gaps which exist between the baselines and the targets. And in terms of the practical action now, if you look at most of the cities within, for example, now we are focusing on the Africa, most of the cities do not have reliable data. So without data, then it's very hard for cities to know where they are. It's very hard to set your target because you do not have the baseline. Yeah, so we promote this model we call the urban observatory model, where it involves bringing stakeholders together, stakeholders within the urban areas, within the countries, within the regions, more particularly the urban actors dealing with data, dealing with urban development. Sorry. Yeah, so and then this urban observatory model has got a stakeholders component. Then it also has the data component, where the stakeholders work towards a platform for data management, data dissemination for the city. And then all this data comes together. And then there's a decision interface. So it's a system that can be used to guide action, inform cities how they are doing, capturing their baseline, also looking at how the prospect for their realization of the SDG. And there are so many urban observatories already existing. So we have already like 300 urban observatories, and the active ones would be about 100 already active ones. And the active ones are involved in what we call the Global Urban Observatory Network, which is coordinated by UN Habitat. So we have a network of urban observatories, and they come together to share experiences, to share knowledge, and also to support each other in terms of filling the gaps which exist, and also making sure that we also have a platform to share experience with other urban observatories. So in terms of the establishment of the observatories, the process involves the planning, the implementation component, and we also have the certification component. So the planning is identifying the purpose of the observatory, getting a host institution that will be central in hosting the urban observatory, identifying the stakeholders who are involved in data for that country or for that region, and then selecting or getting a steering committee that leads the operation of the urban observatory. And then you have to define the objectives and the vision of the observatory. And we have very good examples already globally on how observatories operate. And these observatories have been very instrumental in filling the data gaps which exist within urban areas, because with a system, then you're able to collect data which is multi-temporal. You have continuous development of data, continuous development of action, but also connecting to stakeholders who are involved in decision making. And then we have the certification, which brings the observatory within the framework of the global urban, the NUA network. This is the network of observatories. So within the UN Habitat, we are supporting observatories to share experiences, to give the technical guidance. So the GUANET is facilitating partnership and all these other components of making sure that the observatories are connected and guided through all the necessary steps. We do have, for example, cities which have indicator frameworks which are not aligned to the new urban agenda. So the statistics are there, but they're not aligned. So you're not able to tell exactly where you stand in terms of performance, because your data is not comparable by geography. It's not comparable by biometrics. It's not comparable by temporal scales. So this is the kind of guidance that many cities get from this urban observatory network. And just to give a snapshot of the operations that we do have within the data and statistics unit, we have the streams that deals with geospatial data. We have another stream that deals with the non-spatial data. And then we have a process of connecting with the national statistical offices to collect data from their portals and databases, so that we can generate a regional estimate. We can generate statistics which can inform where we are globally in terms of the realization of the new urban agenda. But then we also build capacity to make sure that cities and nations, countries can have the capacity to directly understand their performance and also contribute to the reporting of the performance within the new urban agenda. Yeah, so in a more technical level, we're going to discuss how we have the data portal, how we look at the indicators in particular, and then how we have a data site where we have the visualization, where we have the feedback mechanism, and also the analytics. So this is more in a snapshot on the different components that you can have in terms of managing data for new urban agenda reporting and monitoring. And then we'll have a section where we can discuss a few technical details on the indicators and what we need to do, for example, to see that we have the right data for reporting and monitoring. So I'll stop there for now. Then I'll be back at some point. Thank you so much. Over to you, Maria.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. I think that already with this 10 minutes presentation, we got a lot of new concepts and also a lot of answers to the challenges that the participants were expressing at the beginning. One of them, the challenge that they mentioned was the link or the context where you don't have a good data quality or limited data, and that's why then you mentioned that the urban observatory model is actually the response or is a solution for those kind of contexts where they don't have data availability, and it's starting from stakeholders, no, as I understood. So many times also we think that we just need to rely or wait for statistical offices or organizations to start the identification or the using of indicators, but actually now, as Daniel mentioned, we can also start from stakeholders collecting the data during this steering committee, and also practically starting their own data collection. So I would like to invite everyone, while Agnes continue with our next interactive activity, I would like to ask everyone if you have any question so far, because I know that this can be a quite technical topic and might be difficult to understand, but you can feel free to open the mic to write questions or comments in the chat. What you didn't understand or what you would like to repeat as well is also welcome. The other comment that I wanted to highlight, or the other concept that I wanted to highlight, is the link between the SDG localization and the new urban agenda, because that's also a common challenge or question that we receive frequently here at UN Habitat, and is what is the difference, or what can I do, or why do I need to report or use different frameworks. But now also Daniel clarified that actually you can use the indicators that are implemented for the SDGs localization, and you can also implement them or use the information gathered from these data sets to monitor and to report on the new urban agenda. So I think that those two key concepts are the ones that I took from this first part of the presentation. If there is anyone or if there is not anyone that wants to make a question, then we can continue with Agnese and our presentation or interactive activity. Agnese.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose, and thank you, Daniel, for this first deep dive on urban monitoring. So on screen, you can see a QR code that links to a second survey with 4 questions that build upon what we have seen in the presentation so far. And it's a series of questions to reflect on what Daniel has discussed with us. And we start with a question, okay, how would you approach the selection of indicators for a mid-sized city in Africa? I will also share the link to join the activity in the chat so that it could be also assessed from there. Let me just... here. And you can reflect on that, and it's 4 simple questions. A couple are related to this, and a couple are related to setting up urban observatory, and then we can discuss together with Daniel on the answers. In the meantime, if you have any question, any reflection, please raise your hand and open your mic, and we will be able to hear from you, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Don't be shy. There's no right or wrong answer in answering this short survey, but it's just a prompt to spark collective reflections on what we have seen so far. We have one brave responder that they gave a reply.
If we don't have these responses, then we can repeat the presentation to see to see if you get some knowledge, if you get some new ideas from this presentation. As Agnese mentioned, there is no right and wrong. We just want to see if you got some new knowledge from this presentation, or if you feel now prepared to do a first step, to know what is the first step.
Exactly. And of course, this is a very simplified question, but there are many things to take into account to answer. But this is exactly why we put this question and why we would like to spark collective reflection on it. Okay, we have three responses that have been submitted. Okay, and more are coming. Okay, so Maybe we can start with what we have on screen, Daniel, and then as participants keep answering, then we will see more replies in the next questions. So we have a slight majority for choosing indicators based on availability of data, whereas the other indications are aligning indicators with city priorities, vision, and strategic plan, or choose indicators based on accessibility of monitoring tools. And then there's the option to choose other. And here participants are required to expand on their answer. So let's see. Yeah, data is secret. Okay, so it's related to data availability and the possibility to share data among institutions. Should be based on availability, accessibility, and monitoring. The indicators of the strategic plan and the SDG targets indicators first, and then align with the National Development Plan. Over to you, Daniel, to reply to this or to reflect on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Agnes. Yeah. So indeed, I think as we have seen from the responses, there are various components that you can consider when you are looking at the indicator framework for a small city. And I would say what is very essential most of the time comes to be the vision of the city. So the vision of a city or the vision of a region. So most of the time, every city will have its own strategic plans, which have been developed by the local stakeholders, together with the leadership of the city, together with the people of those cities. So having metrics to measure how those components are performing in terms of realization of the vision of that city, I think this is very important. But now we also have the component of moving from global to from local to global. Because you might have also your local aspirations, but you might also be ignoring other global perspectives that every city needs to consider. And this is why we have like the commitment of the New Urban Agenda, where we have all these nations coming together to look at the priorities. For example, we have the component on inclusivity, the component on disability, the component on gender. So all these components are very important. So I would say there's no right or wrong answer in terms of understanding how you can select this indicator, but generally you can be limited by some components. For example, data. Some cities do not have data, and data might also be there, but you do not have capacity. So data, for example, you might want to monitor how people access open spaces for your city, but you already do not have that data layer for understanding the open spaces in your city. But this does not mean that the problem is eliminated, because the absence of monitoring doesn't mean the absence of the problem. The problem might be there for sanitation. So this is why this working through around to make sure that you have the data system is very important, because all the indicators we do not monitor are still a problem to our city. So I would say all these components are coming very handy. Capacity sometimes can limit how we monitor, how we select our indicators, because some of them are a bit statistical. You may not have the necessary capacity. But I'll finish by mentioning opportunities which exist now. Now we do have the open source tools, which are very easy to use. Initially, we used to have commercial software, for example, very expensive software. Nowadays, almost every commercial software has an alternative open source application that you can use to do statistical, to do geospatial mapping. And then expertise already now is becoming very easy to access. So many people now have trained themselves. So most of the cities have the capacity. So I say that the responses are very correct. And of course, it depends with the vision of the city, and of course, how much the city want to focus on specific components towards sustainability, including also integrating the global understanding of sustainability from local to global. So combined together. I'll stop there, Agnes. I don't take all the time.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Let's move on. Then we have two other questions about.
We can also, there is a question here, sorry for interrupting, Agnes. Lizzie, she's saying that she wants to speak. Lizzie, you can raise your hand if you want to add your comments, or if you have any insight that you want to share with us. Just let us know. Lizzie, can you hear me? Okay, just for you to know, if you want to speak, just raise your hand. We are here with you. I read you. Okay, that's all. Agnes, you can continue.
Okay, so the last two questions are related to setting up a urban observatory in your context. So let's imagine you have to do that. What would be the purpose? And then in the next two questions, we asked where would it sit institutionally and why? So in terms of purpose, here we have research and analyze trend, measure impacts, share knowledge, inform and guide policy, help take decisions, establish a dedicated and permanent measuring mechanisms and repository of data, monitoring the levels the city is in meeting the set targets, provide a baseline for good decisions, try to collect data on the living conditions of the urban population, again, decision-making, evidence-based planning and decision-making, and generate data. And then where it would sit institutionally, we have urban agency, it should sit in the research, monitoring and evaluation unit in the city, Ministry of Urban Settlements, national and regional level, at the regulatory level of the NUA, municipality planning department, academia for validity, municipality and city government. Over to you, Daniel, to elaborate on this.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of the question number 3, where we are asking why would you set the purpose of the urban observatory? Yes. Yes, I think everything here fits well right into the urban observatory, and I think this captures right the decision. It's very key. But central to an urban observatory is the whole chain from data decision. So having an indicator framework is one thing. Also having a team making decision for the city is one thing. Having another team that is informing action is one thing. So within the urban observatory, one thing that is achieved by urban observatory is coordination. Coordination where stakeholders can come together and they deal with different components. For example, the Ministry for Housing might have data on housing, but we might also have a lot of data that is coming from academia, that might be coming from the department within the local authority. So all this now creates an opportunity where all these data layers can be overlaid. Also making sure that there is continuity of data management. If you have, for example, a census that captures data every 10 years, then you might not know what is happening between these 10 years. But if you have an urban observatory, all the small surveys which are done within the city can be put against within the urban observatory, and they can respond to decisions, which is very useful. Monitoring now becomes very portable, and also public engagement. I think we already know that public engagement is very central to realization of the new urban agenda. So with an urban observatory, then we have a foundation for engagement of the public. The civil society get a chance to contribute to the urban observatory. So the other component on the hosting of urban observatory, hosting is guided mostly by the opportunity that is there to host. So there could be an opportunity to host the urban observatory within an institution. It could be within an urban agency. It could be within a ministry. So we have different arrangements for hosting. And I think when stakeholders sit together, we encourage a steering committee, urban actors to sit together and decide on the best host that will provide, for example, continuity. If an urban observatory does not have continuity, then it doesn't have its purpose. So you might have maybe a one-time funding that sets up a big infrastructure, but then we do not have a system of managing how this infrastructure is maintained over time. So this becomes a challenge. Yeah, so we might also have a very weak institution. Maybe the university could be there to support this hosting, but it may not have maybe the opportunity to engage the stakeholders. It might also be biased sometimes. Maybe the national government may not be the best one to engage the other stakeholders. So it has to be discussed, and the most suitable ones can be established. And it could also be an independent organization, an independent team that stands within the city to act as an urban observatory. Yeah, so all of them could be right, and I would say this depends very much on the context. That's why we have most of the observatories hosted by the local authorities, others by the national government, others by the academia, others are hosted by several agencies. Yeah, for example, the Guateng has got like three stakeholders coming together. So yeah, so thank you so much. The validity, the purpose, the data itself. Yeah, some
Exactly.
organizations might have the opportunity to provide more data. So this might also be an opportunity to make them the host if they can support, this data and analytics. They might have the capacity to do the analytics and also the data collection. So all these are very central to the urban observatory. Over.
Thank you.
Are we going with Lizzie, who has the hand raised? Lizzie, go on, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name
Good
is
afternoon.
Lizzie Ibine from Nigeria, from the civil society space. My question is, this should be a country-led activity, and the local governments are situated in the communities. What is the role of civil society, and how do we come in? Thank you. Sorry, I have one small baby behind me. My grandson is here.
It's great. It's great that he's joining. Yes, Daniel, would you like to start, and maybe I can complement later?
Thank you so much, Lizzie. So my understanding of the question is, you mean the monitoring of the urban agenda, or how the civil society comes in. Of course, we have so many stakeholders within the urban. That's why we cannot have one individual stakeholders monitoring the urban. That's why it might be led by our contact agency, for example, from the data is the National Statistics Office. But then all the data is coming from different agencies. It could be coming from the ministry, it could be coming from the civil society. And we know the civil society is very important in the contribution towards the decision making for the cities. So under the urban observatory model, this is how we bring in the civil society to make sure that the civil society gets its opportunity to sit together with the local stakeholders, with the national stakeholders, with the academia, to bring together all that is required. And then the report is not done just by the government, it's done by the team of stakeholders. Yeah, so the reality is it's not just a national government process. It's a process that is coordinated, could be coordinated by the national or the local government, but the process is pushed, is driven by multiple stakeholders. So over to you, Agnes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel, for your response. Also, I was just responding a couple of questions on the chat, probably connected to the same question as about we also have as UN Habitat the World Urban Forum that is coming in May, and also the organization of many national and local urban forums, which are also great platforms for stakeholders to participate and to engage with local governments. And also this year we're having a new strategic plan for or a new strategy for stakeholders engagement, because it's at the core of the new strategic plan of the new urban agenda. So I just shared in the chat also the link to the NUA newsletter, where you can stay informed with events and more engagement opportunities for you as a stakeholder to engage and to connect with your local, regional, and national government. So I think that with that, we can continue with our session, with our second part of the session. I would like also kindly to ask you, Daniel, if you can speak a bit louder. We have some comments in the chats. I'm reading you, so then they can understand quite clear. Thank you very much, Daniel. The floor is yours.
Okay, I hope I'll be louder enough.
For me, it's okay. I would like to see
Okay.
some thumbs up to see for everyone it's also fine. Please let us know if now is better. Yes, Reinhard, thank you. Okay, we can continue.
Thank you. Yeah, so if I'm not loud enough, please feel free to speak. Then we are going to go a bit more into the details of this indicator framework, the new urban agenda. And as I mentioned in my first presentation, that we have so many indicators which you can think about when you think about monitoring the new urban agenda. So within the urban monitoring framework, we have indicators which are clustered by the domains, by the city objectives, and this is what we call the wheel of the UMF, just showing that everything in the same picture, and that you might have priority on environment, you might have priority on culture, you might have a priority on society, and there are different indicators which are there. So the details for the indicators are what you can see there. For example, indicators on under 5 mortality, access to services. We have indicators on safety, indicators on basic services here. I see vaccination, health, migration. So it's a whole set of indicators clustered in different domains. So the priorities here can be chosen by at the local level, and it can also be guided by all the other discussion, the other components that we have discussed. For example, the components on the priorities, and also the global coverage of the relevance of the indicator. And each of the indicator has got metadata. Metadata includes the definition, the concept, the classifications, the units of measure, data sources, the methodologies, the computation. So these are like the technical components of each of the indicator. And without clarity on the metadata, it's very hard to measure the indicator. So the first thing with an indicator is understanding what is it measuring. So, and then we also have the question on the geography. The geography here means if you have, for example, this is a city in Mozambique, called Kilimane. Kilimane has got the boundaries in white within the urban formal boundaries. But if you look at the urbanization from a map, you realize that we have some rural areas captured within the city, but we have some urban areas not captured by the urban boundaries. So this presents a scenario where if you monitor within the urban boundaries, then you're missing some areas which are urban, but you're also monitoring some areas which are rural within the urban component. So if you want to have comparable data that can tell you that your city is achieving urban sustainability based on comparable urban metrics, so that you can compare one city with another, then we have an approach that we recommend called application of the degree of urbanization tool to identify which areas within your city are urbanized, so that you do not miss monitoring these areas when you're monitoring urbanization within your city. Yeah, so we have a tool that is already in our sorry, I need to speak louder. Yeah, so we have a tool that is already within access to our, you can access it within our data site. It's called the degree of urbanization, and it can show you how we go through these processes. There was a question on sharing the materials and the links. We already have them, so we are going to share all these links and materials for your reference. Yeah, so there are different streams of data. Here, the streams include secondary data, which can, for example, be collected from survey, analyzed from existing survey or global surveys, for example, the DHS, the MIGS, and the census. But we also have primary data, and we have tools which we also guide cities to collect data with. For example, you can have the ODK COBOL toolboxes where you go to the field, you design the questionnaires, you do the sampling. So these are some of the data processes you can go through, and some of them are not as expensive as you might imagine. All you need to do is to have a questionnaire that is configured within a survey, and then you deploy that survey to your city. So it might not take as much. You just need to have a proper sampling framework for your city, and then you have a team of field assistants collecting the data. And then the biggest opportunity today is the geospatial data, which it's quite easy to get from open sources. For example, even the OpenStreetMap, it's already very rich in open data where open source, anyone just goes there and updates relevant data. And then you can use your mechanism to clean and pick the data that is proper, and then you can make it official for the city if you want. Based on validation, and then you can use this to do a lot of analysis. For urban growth, you can do this urban analysis using multi-temporal satellite data, which is freely accessible. We also have other easy indicators where you just need to check with the checklist, where, for example, whether this one is on utilization of e-governance tools. You have like a binary question where you're picking yes, no, and then you have a score, and this is very useful for reporting. the performance of the city, and you can do this over time to check how the city is performing. So just to give an example of one of the indicators, this one is on is on proportion of urban population living in slums and informal settlements. And every indicator has to start with definition on what is a slum, what is an informal settlement, what is inadequate housing. Yeah, so once you have clarity on what all these components means, then you go to the next component on what exactly do you want to measure. So for example, this one breaks down slums into services, access to water, access to sanitation, and then you have to feed this into your survey, and then you collect all these different components. And then with that data, then you can do your data analytics, and within the analytics, you can pick easily you can generate the statistics. And this is what we have been doing and supporting countries to do. We have, for example, the component on inadequate housing. Then how do you define an inadequate housing? For example, based on the income spent by a household as a proportion of the household income for the household income for that household. Yeah, so this is an example of an indicator that needs to be monitored, and I'll show another one that relies on geospatial data. This one is on access to open spaces, where you start with understanding where the location of open spaces are, how your urban is to be defined, because if you have an urban boundary that covers rural areas, then you might be monitoring access to an urban service, for example, urban open spaces within the rural areas, and that is going to change your metrics because we know within urban areas, there are different thresholds, which, for example, of access to services, 400 meters from an open space is considered convenient. If you go to the rural areas, the metrics will change. Yeah, so all these components, then from there we go through the workflow, then we identify where the spaces are, then we overlay this with population data or the household, the human settlement data, and then we identify populations which have access within these areas. So again, this is support that is directly easy to get from our capacity building, and we can show you how all this is computed, and this is very useful to monitoring the new urban agenda. So this is another scenario where you want to compare indicators. For example, indicators are not comparable generally because they have different metrics, they have different measures. One is life expectancy measured in years. We have a traffic fatality measured in numbers. So how do you compare these two indicators? So under the urban monitoring framework, we have an approach that we recommend how you can standardize the data for comparability. And this is very useful if you want to inform action. You might not have sufficient budget to intervene on all the indicators, but you want to know the weak ones and the strong ones. So then you have to work with the benchmarks to understand the ones which are performing well, the ones which are performing poorly. So in a snapshot, this is to show you what is possible. And the application, again, is also straightforward that we also support in, and materials, we also give the materials to realize these processes. Yeah, so all this converges in the Global Urban Indicators database. So the Global Urban Indicators database tries to create a database for all the urban data that you can achieve. So it's like the data within the urban observatories all coming together, data from the national statistical offices coming together into one database. So some data could be spatial, others non-spatial. We have the processes of data collection, and then we also guide on data validation. And there's a site that you can access some of the data we have already put within the urban indicators database. And then we have this opportunity on Earth observation. We have an Earth observation toolkit where we have worked with a lot of stakeholders dealing with geospatial data to open the opportunity for cities to access geospatial data. These are like big data partners like NASA, like ESA, and then we have analytics together with them, and then we have urban data that you can share with cities to start with this capacity, and then they can also validate and use this data for SDG and NUA reporting. Yeah, so there was a question on the guides and the tools. So we do have a lot of tools, very detailed, showing how you can go through the workflow of each of the indicator, the step-by-step computation of the resources, or computation of the indicators, and the resources, which you can also access from our data site, but also from, we could also share all the other requirements for the computation. So within our databases, we also have a lot of analytics we are doing. This is ideally what you could also be doing within your urban observatory. For example, preparing a city profile. You look at a screenshot of the city for different time periods, and then you make a profile. And this profile can be used for discussion with the city actors when they're informing action. For example, the civil society will have a chance to provide the inputs and support within the preparation of the city profiles. We have like the City Prosperity Initiative reports. We have the UMF reports for different cities, and also urban observatories reports, which you could also access within some of our within our data repositories. And of course, at the dissemination level, we have these reports which are global, like the SDG 11 synthesis report, showing the performance of SDG 11 as a synthesis report, and we have all these other materials that we can share. Yeah, so really it's a lot that it happens within the data. So I'm just giving screenshots so that this can also trigger the questions so that we can emphasize and also give direction on particularly the areas where you need more capacity that you can guide more towards the monitoring and reporting. So data is very central within the monitoring, and data requires these sequential efforts all the way from data acquisition to processing to harmonization, and then eventually to aggregation. You might have data for one city, but you want to compare it to another city and also aggregate to a national value. And then from our end, we also do the regional aggregation. That's why we generate these charts which are showing the performances of different regions. It goes through all this data aggregation from the city to the national to the regional and then to a global statistic. Yeah, so I'll stop there. I'm sure there will be questions and I'll be happy to discuss more. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for this second part of the presentation. I think it was also quite useful. Especially there was one information that you delivered. I would like you to repeat about the platform where people can upload their information, their data for official cities. I think that's quite important for everyone who was asking how, as a stakeholder, can people contribute with the collection of data, right? So can you please repeat the name of this platform?
Yeah, I will share in the chat. We have a data site called data.unhabitat.org.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have a platform for data within the UN Habitat, where you have an opportunity to upload any data. Also, you can also write directly to us. So if you have availability of data that can feed into the Global Urban Indicators database, this would be a nice opportunity to share there. And then our team just does the review and integration with the data that is already existing, and this provides access to data users.
Yeah, I think it's great because, yes, as many people, as individuals, sometimes they feel that there is no way for them to participate in the collection of data, but still there is a huge need for everyone to have access and or they used to use this kind of information, and still is not available for everyone. So I think that is a key factor or key insight that you share with us today, as many others through your presentations. Again, I would like to ask everyone if they have questions, if they have insights, thoughts about the collection of indicators or of data or the analysis of data. How is it for your context, probably? How does it work for you? I don't know, as a students, if we have some students there, as a stakeholders, or also as organizations. We have one question in the chat, and is if there are good examples of where the data was used to inform and guide policy program implementation. I don't know, Daniel, if you have any example in mind, you can share with us.
So most of the cities actually rely on data to inform action. So I may not point to specific examples, but what I know is that many cities will have urbans in their decision-making platforms. They do engage data experts. So at different levels, a lot of data gets into decision-making. But now most of these processes are also interlinked with political processes. So you may not say 100% that data was used to inform decision making, because we have a lot of political components in decision making within the cities. So that's why, for example, we have several urban observatories which participate in national dialogues. The Kasim Urban Observatory, we have the Guateng Urban Observatories. We also were having a discussion with the Cairo Cairo National Observatory. So these observatories influence a lot the decisions which are made at the global level. But of course, as I mentioned, everything has to be interlinked with the local processes, which could also be political as well. Yeah. So if, for example, politicians might also have their promises to the population, so some of them might override, the priorities of the city. So these are political processes, but we encourage the stakeholders to get engaged so that they can push more data-driven actions within the decision making. And without fact, then you're not able to present your case well. But with data, you can present your case well, that these are good interventions, and this is where we need to
Great. Thank you, Daniel, for... Oh, we stop hearing you. Yes. Now we have a question from Erika. You have your hand raised. Go on, please. The floor is yours.
Hello, do you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Erika, are you there?
Yes, at least I can hear you, Erika.
Okay.
Erika, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
and
we
I
can
am
give
speaking.
Erika some time. Now, I think maybe she's trying to talk, but we cannot hear you, Erika. You are, yes, I can see that you are
I
opening
could hear her.
and closing your mic, but we are not able to hear you. Maybe if
I
you
could
try.
hear Erika.
You can
I
hear
could
her.
hear Erika.
Okay.
Yeah, so probably, I don't know if others
So it's
could, but
me.
I could.
So it's me.
But I don't know how.
Hello, okay, maybe I can talk
Now.
and then.
Now.
No, I just drop my question even in the chat if someone cannot hear me. We have this output in one of our projects. We are trying to set up an urban observatory in Guinea-Bissau. But actually, we are facing a lot of challenges, especially institutional representatives turnover, and also we cannot really rely on civil society organizations in terms of means of data collections. So not to be too negative, but I would like to ask if there are some if this characteristic cannot really make this successful, like we have these risks and bad assumptions, do you think it's still possible to implement this kind of urban observatory in such a context? Thank you.
Yes, Erika, thank you so much for the question. Yes, so in terms of establishing an urban observatory, what is important is to get started. So you may not have all the ingredients ready. So you need stakeholders, you need data, you need a platform. So you need a continuity plan. But before you get started, then everything looks very hard. So it could start very small, even with a minimum set of data. We even encourage urban observatories to start with 2, 3 data sets. And once you have 3 data sets, and then you continually develop strategies to expand, include more stakeholders. So what will be central would be to identify a host, even within the challenging institutional setup that you have. If you can have a host, and then from there, you can start working on the network of stakeholders. It might be very small at the beginning, and then over time, you can try to expand it based on the opportunity and maybe the changing political situations within the country. So I would say it's possible, but it may not be full scale at the beginning. but getting started could be the key to making things happen.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that's key to start, even if at the beginning it looks like it's quite difficult to start the process. But I think that it's important to even plant the seed, and then with the time, I'm sure that the progress is gonna be more clear and more opportunities are gonna show up for you to continue and to create a bigger impact. So with that, I would like to continue also on that sense. Actually, Erika opened the floor for our next step, and it's a reflection exercise because we would like to know if any of you have been involved in the implementation of indicators or reporting or in any reporting process at any level. It could be at the data collection level or the implementation of indicators or the data analysis or managing a database, or as Erika was mentioning, creating already an urban observatory. You can drop your answers in the chat. We would like to know, yes, at any stage, have you been involved in the process of the use of indicators? Just let us know. And also, maybe what are the challenges of being in this process or on the reporting process indeed? What are the challenges that you have experienced, either, I don't know, assessing the data, data computation, understanding the limits, as Daniel was mentioning in the example, or if actually you are already in a statistical level that you are also facing some issues there, or what. Let us know also in the chat if you want to share your answers. So for us also to know how can we as UN Habitat contribute to these type of challenges, because if we cannot hear from you, from the context, from the ground, what are the challenges that people is experiencing, then it will be more difficult for us to respond to those needs. So I will kindly invite you to drop your questions or your answers on the chat, so then we have a better idea how we can help each other.
We have a question in the meantime, as you think about this, as you think about your answers and put them in the chat. We have a question from Margaret. I hope I pronounced it correctly. She dropped it, or they dropped it in the chat. Who is supposed to initiate the process? I am interested for the Kenyan cities. Margaret, if you want to elaborate on that, please raise your hand and open your mic. Otherwise, it's over to you for RFI, Daniel.
Yes, yes, I understand Margaret's question. I think she's pointing to the urban observatory. So the urban observatory actually can be started. It can be initiated by any stakeholder. For example, for the Kenya opportunity, we had a discussion with the Ministry of Housing. They were already interested in starting an urban observatory, and we had an initial discussion with them. Yeah, so what would be nice is to map the stakeholders that would be central. If you're starting an urban observatory, at some point the local authority will have to be part of the discussion. The national government might be interested, particularly specific ministries which are active within the urban component. If it's, for example, an urban observatory, we have urban observatories, we have regional, we also have national observatories. Yeah, so if you can have an indication of the key stakeholders, then this process can kickstart with a discussion with, like a meeting with who will be central. And eventually it might even spill over to a discussion on fundraising, because once you have the setup, the urban observatory setup, you also need to think about strategies on how you can have some minimal resources to keep it going. You might have a physical space, for example. You might also have a team that is handling the data. You might also want to expand into data collection. Yeah, so the way forward would be to map the key stakeholders, and then we also map the resources which will be there to get started within the context which is provided. So over.
Great. That's a great answer, Daniel. Thank you, because yes, those are clear steps for everyone to start. There is also a common challenge, and I can see also in the chat. And Daniel, I don't know, what can people do when, for example, the information is not available, or what is commonly named as the information is secret, it's keeping in secret. What can people do in those cases?
Yeah, this one is a big challenge because most of some national government and local authorities classify their data as private or secret. So there's no way to access the data. So I would say we just have to respect the national priority, the national classification of data, because they do have their reasons for classifying it as private. But what I've seen most of the time is we have opportunities of open data. So for example, there was a city that was telling us their data on public transport was private, but then the data was already online because the open platforms are already providing a lot of data. So I think over time, it's the engagement with the authorities to understand that some data is generally public, unless they may not have reasons to keep them secret. But for now, if an authority classifies data as secret and private, it's very hard to use that data because you also have to respect the national processes for classification, which could be guided by so many things.
Yeah, sure. Still, I will encourage them to not stop there in the process and start their own data collection. As you mentioned before, there are many ways of doing that by themselves as stakeholders and providing it in open data sources. So yes, I will encourage them to continue. And then we can see some change and some implementation of the new urban agenda. So let's continue with our last part of the session. We would like again to hear from you some last reflections of this session, and I would like to ask you if you would have to take one concrete action today, what will it be? What can you do in the next 60 days related to urban data monitoring? What will be that concrete action that you can take to implement or to use or to start your monitoring process and the use of indicators? What do you think that could be? And just let us know again, if you can raise your hand, if you can, do you want to open the mic, or just leave us your comments on the chat. We would like to know, if you finish this session with one example of what can you do today, what will be that action that you can take today?
In the meantime, while you think about what could be an action, I read a question from Folaki in the chat. A question for you, Daniel. Is Global Urban Observatory different from Environmental Monitoring Information System, or it is more a change of nomenclature?
Yes, these are two different components. The Global Urban Observatory is not very thematic. Most of the time, it will just focus on. It's an observatory for a city or a region, capturing all the components from environmental to economic to cultural to governance. Yeah, so these are different systems. So the environmental one is more focused on environmental monitoring. Yeah, so ideally they serve different purposes, but of course the data on environmental monitoring could eventually be components of data within the Urban Observatory.
Thank you.
So then, if we don't have concrete actions from you, I would like to give you some ideas for you to start today or implementing from here to the next 60 days. So what about you can start assessing the data availability that you have in your context, which I think that is a key first step that everybody can take from now on. Also, you can start identifying the list of indicators for your city or for your country that actually some people is already collecting data for. Also, you can start checking the alignment of the local indicators and the global indicators. How are the national and the local level connected? Or also, you can assess potential for localization of global indicators as well in the local context. I think that connection is quite important for people who's working at the national, the local, or the regional level to start aligning the use of your data with the global data sets. With that, I would like then to move to our last slides of the day. I would like to remind you, about our next NUA global session. That's going to be from action to report, where we are going to see how all this knowledge that we saw in the last NUA sessions, how can we implement that information, including the one today, into a national progress report, and how can we be part of the national progress report as stakeholders, as governments, national, local, or regional governments, or as individuals. Also, I would like to kindly ask you to fill our feedback form. Once we close the session, you will have a pop-up window where you can leave us the feedback, so then we can improve our next sessions. And this is also an invitation for you to participate in the World Urban Forum, which is going to happen in the 17th, from the 17th to the 22nd of May in Baku, in Azerbaijan. I saw some people from Azerbaijan, so I'm happy that we are going to meet you there in the next months, where this is a great opportunity for everyone to engage with people from different countries, but also with your own local government. So it's an open, free event that everybody can participate. So don't hesitate to join us there. And also remember that all the materials that we shared in this session are gonna be uploaded in our sessions package in the NUA platform. So you can scan the QR code and you will find all the materials there. So if there are not any more questions or feedback, I would like to close the session of the day. Thank you very much, Daniel, for your inputs, for the information, for your patience with us as well, and for sharing all this information. Again, you can find all the information in the Urban platform. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to us in UN Habitat Learn at un.org. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Agnes, my colleagues, and also thank you everyone for participating in today's session, and see you next session. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.